Hello there, it's me, Rama, and I wanted to talk today about my Paradise diet system, and basically a little bit of background as to why I think raw food is so important. And my Paradise diet system is not the standard raw food diet, it's a very specific kind of raw food diet. In case you need some background, raw food means it's uncooked, not processed in any way, preferably organic, and it's just simple fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, honey, stuff like that. But I actually structure that rather vast realm of unprocessed foods into very specific categories, very specific parts of the body. And for more info on my dietary system, you should check out my website, which is lightningfitness.org. That's lightning with two N's, fitness.org, O-R-G. Now, today I want to talk about why eating uncooked foods is important, because you might be wondering, like, well, what's the whole point? What's the foundation of all this? Because that's obviously key to the whole system of my diet, is the fact that it's uncooked. Ultimately, that's my goal. I'm not saying that you should be instantly eating only raw food, I'm saying that you should work toward that goal of eating only raw food, and here's why. And actually, the way I'm going to explain it is I'm going to tell a story. I'm not going to just sort of give you some sort of dissertation on the chemical benefits of raw food. I want to tell a story, and I'm not asking you to believe my story. I'm asking you to consider it, and then ask yourself when I'm done, what if it's true? So a long time ago, humanity lived in nature. Humanity didn't have any technology. Humanity was one with nature. All humans lived in their proper climate, which was tropical. And they lived just like the other animals. They were not overabundant in number. They were sufficient in number. There was no overpopulation or overcrowding, and no fighting for resources, because there was plenty to go around, because there weren't too many humans. There were only a sufficient number of them. And they were quite happy doing their thing, and they were in harmony with nature and in harmony with the universe, the larger whole, and they felt fabulous. And then one day something happened. Someone gave humanity fire. And when humanity was given fire, this caused all sorts of interesting things to happen. And one of the first things that happened was that humanity decided to cook its food. Humans decided, oh, look what happens if we apply fire to our food. And some of the other things that happened is humanity used fire to heat their environment, and they said, well, gee, we don't actually have to live in the tropics, we can go to other climates now. We can live in places where it's colder because we have fire now. And so they began to use fire to enable them to leave the tropics. Now, in my opinion, humans belong in the tropics because we don't really have a lot of hair. We don't have a lot of excess hair to use, so what would we do in a colder climate? Polar bears, I'm sure, are very happy in the colder climates, but humans, I don't think so. Not in my experience. I can't even stand cold days in a northern climate such as where I live in New Jersey without additional layers of clothing. So, and by comparison, I don't think a polar bear would be very happy going to the tropics, because that polar bear would just be like, oh, it's so hot. Whereas humans go to the Arctic or the northern climates where the polar bear lives and says, oh, it's so cold. Polar bear says it's so hot, humans say it's so cold. Gee, maybe it's all because of the hair on the skin, right? So if a human's in the tropics, the human has relatively little need for technology and certainly no need for fire. But when fire was introduced, now humans go to these artificial climates and they're no longer in their natural habitat. And this brings a lot of inherent disharmony with the body all by itself, because now it changes your even choice of foods. Whereas in the tropics there's one set of foods, in northern climates there's another set of foods. Changes a whole bunch of things, actually. And one of the other things that happened when humanity discovered fire was that they also, well, let me backtrack a bit. So as humanity started going to colder climates, humanity's numbers started growing, because humanity was now able to survive in other climates and was able to use fire to basically spread all over the globe. So population levels of humans began to rise in areas where humans didn't belong. And resources are scarcer in those colder climates. Food is not as abundant, was not as abundant. Again, this is the story I'm presenting to you. Just see how you like it. You know, see what you think of it. I'm not presenting it as fact. I'm presenting it as something to consider. What if this was what happened? This is my perception of what happened a long time ago. I don't consider it a story. I consider it my understanding of our history, which isn't in the textbooks as clearly as I'm presenting. And the reason I feel like I can make these claims that this is my perception of the past is because I have cultivated a lot of my inner perceptions. I've developed a lot of my intuitive faculties by activating the brain regions, and this is my opinion of what I reviewed from the records of the past intuitively. This is just, every atom and every tree and the whole planet has a memory, and the planets had one continuous lifespan for many, many thousands of years, whereas humans have not. The planet has. So if you can tune into the atomic record of Mother Earth and talk and perceive her wisdom in the matter, she has a complete record of what's happened, even though your short little lifespan hasn't seen it. Her long lifespan has. Certainly the sun has. So there's actually parts of nature that had one continuous life, and they have a continuous memory bank, and I've tuned into their memory banks, and this is what I saw. So again, back to my story, my version of our history. So humans began to over-multiply, they began to overproduce, because they were now in climates where they didn't belong. And consequently, they began to fight for resources, because again, resources became scarcer, not only because they were in climates where they didn't belong, but because there were more of them. So now resources are scarce, so now humans did something which I don't really approve of, which is they started war. And humanity quickly learned something about fire. Fire is a weapon of mass destruction. I have proof. You have a village composed of mostly natural flammable materials, a whole village of people. You take one arrow, you light it on fire, you shoot it into the village, and the whole village is gone in a short period of time. That is what I call a weapon of mass destruction. Clubs are not weapons of mass destruction, nor are spears, but fire is. So in my opinion, fire was the first weapon of mass destruction. So here we have humanity using fire to leave their natural habitat, kill each other in a format very similar to atomic bombs, weapons of mass destruction, using fire to light a whole village and torch it, and humanity also happens to use fire to cook their food. So through the use of fire, humanity has initiated several different technologies, and all of modern technology is basically variations on fire. Fire burns wood. Nuclear reactors burn atoms. Yes, I know that is sort of a funny phrasing, but that's my opinion of what's happening. The atom structures, the large molecules, are being broken down. That's what fission is. A fission reactor is breaking down these huge molecules. Right? It's not like a hydrogen atom. It's like this huge uranium atom, which has this huge structure and is being broken down. Now, it's the same thing with fire. You take a log of wood and you break it down. That's just my opinion. It's my analogy. See how you like it. So